In today's episode, Miles and I talk to our most frequent guest, Phil Horning, as we discuss the takeaways and lessons learned from their recent seminar around men's work and transformational processes from the inside and out. We talk a little bit about how we learn and grow and continue to evolve, regardless of how long we've been doing quote unquote the work. And we get a little ad hoc personal development work in real time from Miles, Phil, and myself. Stay tuned. And we're live. Phil, Miles, you made it.
We did.
We did.
It's weird to be in Phil's hood
Yeah,
in Denver on this side of things. Yeah.
this time Miles is with me instead of me with you guys.
That's right. This is our first multi-location podcast for where Miles and I are separated. That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird.
It feels so abandoned. Okay, so you guys are just wrapping up what you called a seminar in Colorado. Is that right, Miles?
Yeah. It was How Best to Work with Men by Trevor Boehm, the ManUncivilized creator, who has a podcast called ManUncivilized. Very good. I've mentioned it briefly on some of our episodes. Working with him was super cool, and Duey Freeman was there too, the Jedi Master, Yoda figure who used to teach at Naropa. They put it on, and some of their helpers were there too. It was
Cool.
really,
So
really
this
good.
was a,
It makes a big win.
this was like an in-depth workshop on what it's like to provide teaching and curriculum to men specifically.
More in the psychotherapy or coaching space, like how to work with them therapeutically. So I was teaching men about men in general, where we are in society, where things may have gone wrong, how to bring things back to a version of what healthy masculinity can look like. And then we did a deep dive on Dewey's attachment theory model, which is genius, and we've covered that in a few episodes. Um, and it was interesting to have men and women in the circle this time, because usually it's all men. So it was good, and I feel like we learned a lot. And Trevor's super personable, super nice guy. Hope to do more work with him in the future. And him and Connor Beaton are good friends, so and now I can see why, because they have a lot of crossover.
Well, it sounds like super dense material. Just from what you've shared, that's a lot. I'm excited to get into it. So on a, from the top down, how are you feeling at this moment? Are you decompressing at this point?
I Yeah, it as anytime you do this kind of work, especially retreats, and there were some emotions shown, because the topics are charged, so stuff comes up. You feel a little scattered and brain fogged, and what actually happened kind of catches up to you a few days later. So we're kind of in that liminal space right now, but it's good. Um, I don't know, how are you feeling about it?
I mean, yeah, it was definitely dense material. It's a lot to basically slowly unpack in my head. And I know really, after 8 hours of it, you're just kind of back in your chair, back at home, and just sitting there trying to absorb it. I know both Miles and I were just like, wow, just like we're not going to go anywhere right now. We need to take an hour and just
DoorDash,
absorb. And
DoorDash.
yeah. But the content was fantastic, and I know one of the rabbit holes we could go down, because Miles alluded to it, was how the folks in the audience were therapists or seasoned coaches in that area, um, and how even they themselves have stuff to still unpacked that was reached to during these trainings, because that happens. And it also happened during the other training with Connor Beaton. And then also 2 weeks prior, I also took Dewey's separate course that was local here as well, about the Reichian body structure and the attachment theory, and same type of things were happening too, even though they were seasoned therapists. still just, unpacking things and still needing to work through things. And it's just a constant in life. So
Yeah.
that's something we can definitely get into as well as, and as a reminder to the audience out there that even when you speak to coaches, to therapists, they're human beings too. They still have stuff as well.
Yeah, we're all works in progress. The work doesn't really stop. It just gets deepened and refined, which is good. And you want to be more competent in your field, and the better you'll be. And the better it'll be to your family and to your clients, patients, and to your friends. So layers, man, lots of layers. Super, super good stuff.
Well, let's start there because as last time I think we met, I was coming back from a Wedmore event, and the topic that I was listening to over the weekend was exactly what you were saying. He was like, your ability to grow as a business owner and a leader is directly proportional to your willingness to do personal development work and to continue on your healing journey. And most of that is, though I think you used the term unpacked, which I understand. He used the term letting go and reframing and recapitulation specifically. And I think it's probably not one thing, it's probably a bunch of things that we're doing to address the wounds within ourselves. But I think we should start there because the funny part about it is, I don't know how many people you had in that group, but something slightly different was probably keyed up in every person in that circle. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. And, a lot of one person's pain can be felt to another person in the same manner. And that can key up things. One person asks specific questions about certain area of themselves, can start keying up into somebody else or diving into that, into themselves. And that's when sometimes we'll have to take a pause and let the other person just kind of work it out and work through it for a few minutes. Yeah, it's absolutely a shared.
Yeah, when stuff came up, Dewey would sometimes bring that person forward and ask permission if it was okay to do quasi, I don't know, it's not really psychotherapy, but just like talk about what's coming up sort of in vivo for the rest of the cohort to see. That was really nice. I don't know how many people were there, like 35, 40?
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah, it was a
that.
good amount. It was, yeah, a good, closer to pretty equal men and women.
Yeah, which
was
is
nice.
rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's nice to see more. Go ahead.
it's so important, and it's like the the work is universal, the outcomes are different, right? Getting in touch with and healing masculinity and doubling down on your version of your masculine self or your masculine energy is important. But we're all doing like some sort of inner work where we're trying to reclaim our power. And it might look different when you do it, Phil, versus when Miles does it, when I do it, or when a woman does it in that same setting, but the it's still kind of and it's really similar fields that we're tilling. So then, I mean, did you find anything out about yourself that you didn't know before the weekend started? Well, that's a question to both of you.
Yeah. It's also stuff I already knew, but the first part was talking about attachment, and Dewey likes to call it disorganized contact. Not He doesn't really like the word attachment, and he kind of sees it as it's kind of on a continuum. And I've talked before about having the disorganized version, but I like the way he said it's more about contact, meaning your ability to contact and be in attunement with another human and allow that person to come back and do the same thing to you. And so he showed what that looked like energetically and then in relationship. And then Trevor talked a lot about the uncivilized logo, which is like a gorilla on one side and a Buddha on the other. And the left sort of is archetypally for what he calls the Marlboro man, who's like the lone wolf, doesn't give a fuck about anybody, doesn't need anybody. And then the other guy is on the right side is a sensitive new age guy who's all heart but no boundaries, The other guy has too much structure, the other guy has no structure. And with the disorganized attachment, I notice I have a little bit of both those archetypes within me. And the goal is to bring those two closer together again, sort of like the yin and yang has been like really pulled way out, almost apart by society. So we've been talking about how best to bring that back. What is healthy masculinity? And so I thought about that a lot as he was talking about that for myself. How do those still show up? What's good in both of those and what's not good, quote unquote, and how am I going to integrate those? And we went around the circle the second day, and they said, say one word that you just want to take away or leave from the day. And mine was wholeness, because I was thinking about that. Like my goal is to bring those back to wholeness, and that's a Jungian concept of integrating the masculine and feminine. So sort of the same idea. So that was what was mostly up for me.
I know I was looking to see if I had his book.
Traders?
Yeah, I think I have it placed somewhere else. So you can show that.
Oh,
there it is.
Oh, grab it.
Yeah.
He's got tons of books. You can't see it, but there's
So
some good ones.
what you can see is one side, as Miles was talking, was the vicious. So that's on one front cover. Then the other side is the
Buddha.
The Buddha here. So that was the image he had, just kind of spliced right in the middle with that and actually just put together. So it was very interesting of how seeing that concept displayed out too, and how they talked in depth about the two different types. Really, and he said it's more like a slider scale.
Yeah,
too, between the types. It's like it's not everybody's all on one side or the other.
Not fixed.
He said, yes, we are talking about more on the fringe sides, where we have the super nice guy,
it's all heart.
It's all heart, but there's underneath that is pain. And then you have the Marlboro man, who was very stoic, who's very independent and says, I don't need anybody. But once again, underneath all that is pain. So it was really cool to dive into that and learn that topic. But to kind of go back to your question there, Josh, of like more of myself, what I was learning, and some of the areas I was exploring was, once again, the words contact were repeated throughout the entire workshop, as that is a basis for Dewey's work too, is to make contact with everyone in a sense of relationships, friendships, your client, the therapist. So making true contact through energetic or physical or spiritual or all those means into that. Actually, emotional. That's the other one I was missing. And really for me, it was like the whole encompassing of contact and really making sure to reach out when you are present with someone, to try to match them energetically, to see, not match them, but maybe connect to them to that way energetically, making contact, not just physical, not just emotional, but all the spectrums. And so really, that was a big key component, but also some other things too, in my realizations, some of the things that I've in my past restricted myself against when it came to contact. Those different types of things of how I would, and I love the way that the avoidant and anxious attachments were just put down, put away. They said it's the way how you basically disattach,
break contact.
Yeah. Was through anxiousness or avoidance. It's not how we attach, it's how we break that attachment.
That's why I doesn't like the word attachment, because you'd already be attached to it. So I thought that was genius as well.
Yeah. So I was just reviewing in my own head, I was like, what in my past relationships or friendships or all that have I been doing that where I wasn't in full contact, and either through anxious or avoidant means breaking contact?
It's protected, right?
Right. So it was just more enlightening for me to kind of just review back into my past, to my especially romantic relationships, of how I would break contact through avoidance or anxious means. So it was quite a dive too.
It was for being
Yeah.
just a class, like it was very heartfelt and activating. And the interesting thing I thought he talked about was when, men bond around activities real easily, and that's how we make friends, like shooting or rock climbing or whatever. And you can tell if it's a true deep friendship with contact. If you take away that activity, would you guys still hang out? And if it's a no, the contact was not made in a deep enough, intimate enough way. It was just pseudo around that activity, which is fine, in general, like that's going to happen. But if you want to have a squad or a community or a group of guys that's really has relationships of depth, you could do any activity and still, or take that activity away and still hang out. So like earlier today, one of my buddies, he lives 15 minutes from here, and he's from Germany. When I lived here in Colorado, we were roommates, and we got to see him. We had breakfast, and we just picked up right where we left off. And these two hit it off, and they're going to hang out. It's like he's that kind of guy. Like, doesn't matter what we're doing. Like that relationship with the contact has been formed, and we've known each other for 20 years now. So that was another thing that was very poignant to me when they were explaining that. So
I did want to add in one thing too with that is like, yes, it's okay to have friendships with the groups, that you're in, similar activities where you don't go all the way into that contact level.
for sure.
But it is something to strive for. And for instance, like your friend was talking about how he was part of certain groups, and how if that basically the way that the wheel, that center part of that spoke wheel is gone, everything would fall apart. They wouldn't see each other again when that activity is removed.
Shout out to Damien, that's his name, if he's listening. And his wife.
So no, it was really cool to also learn on that. And there's tons more too we can dive into.
Yeah, I mean, let's go, Damien. People who bring people together, people who are amplifiers to the people around them. I it's a skill, and it's an art to have deep, meaningful relationships, and to break contact in a kind and healthy way that makes, like, you honors your energy and your personhood, and also honors the people that you're disengaging with in a healthy way. And that all of those things takes a lot of skill and work to do. So you get to learn about these concepts, and Miles has a dedication to whole, and being whole. And Phil, what I hear you saying is you want to be more deliberate about having a level of deeper connection with the people that you already have, maybe acquaintanceship with or friendship. You want to be able to level it up, that intensity or intimacy or whatever, whatever it may be, where applicable, and sort of cultivate that skill set. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty spot on. Yeah, it's just deepening the contacts and deepening, or I should say, with contact. It's not that, and hopefully this is one thing too that went through my mind was when you're hearing all this, it's not that you have to bond through traumatic experiences or sharing traumatic stories, but rather you bond through just the willingness to be open with them fully and fully present, and in that expanding upon that, present through contact, in a sense of, okay, what are you truly feeling right now? It could be joy, it could be happiness, it could be something, hey, this great thing, and then you meet them where that is and feeling that, making that contact. Or it could be something that that you're surrounded in a certain setting. Think of very beautiful nature surroundings where you're both in contact with nature, and then also in talking and being able to open up on that level. So it's that capability of opening up, not sitting there saying you have to go through and talk about your trauma or talk about the hard parts of life. It's find the openings that can allow for that contact to be made.
Yeah, that's also vulnerability, if you want to use that word that men typically hate. Yeah, you don't have to trauma bond to get there. You might get there because you want to share wounds at some point. You probably will. So
Yeah.
and that's getting to secure attachment. I mean, you're letting people in an intimate way, or engendering trust. You feel safe. That's what we're going for. We're going back to developing an authentic sense of self. Who am I versus prioritizing to the attachment to the other person. And in our last podcast, we were talking about kind of like the nice guy and codependency when we were kids. And this is a lot of Dewey's work too, is we give up authenticity for attachment to the parents because we're worried about them and their feelings versus growing who we are. Parents are supposed to reflect back what they see in us and help us understand what we're thinking and feeling. If that doesn't happen, we shut down our self-growth to look at what are my parents doing? Do I need to tell you who you are? Do I need to calm your anger down so I don't feel unsafe in my environment? Do I need to hide your liquor so you don't drink? Do I have to do all this weird stuff? You can't find out who you are if you're doing all these things to prioritize attachment. So this is a way you can get back to secure-based attachment, as they say, or contact, is by slowly opening and generating trust and feeling safe. And you don't have to do the avoiding or feeling anxious and trying to shore down relationships and lock them down out of fear of abandonment. And that's good practice. And doing it with men is, we think it's like hard and rare, but it's actually really natural and easy. When we did the men's retreat, like nobody knew each other, and within 2-3 hours we were like in tears and bonding, and like it was just natural. And we're already wired this way and set up. So it's a myth that men can't do this. We've just been told we can't, or got lost. When we can blame two recent wars, and at least for North America, to interrupt that pattern of having a lot of trauma in the family with fathers coming back or no fathers coming back, and that's going to cause some damage. So we're still recovering from that as well. And this whole movement with like quote unquote men's work is to repair that. And so it's just wonderful. And if we don't, we talk about this in the training. Boys and men are looking for this and on the internet, and they'll seek it out. They want to belong to find anything. And what will they find? Oh, the red pill community, or the Andrew Tate type. So it feels better than being isolated and lonely. And they'll just, you take my money, like whatever. They'll just soak it up. And that is that really good?
Are we not supposed to do that? I guess this now is a weird time to announce that our next guest for next week is Andrew Tate. He's coming on the pod,
I
so
forgot.
I thought
Okay,
we
yeah.
were gonna be friends.
I ruined that for you. I'm sorry. You've been soaking up the red pills. Yeah, I'm sorry. We've given you two new options: Connor Beaton and Trevor Boehm.
Well, the question I have for both of you, and this is, you can each answer it in your own way, but what do you think that both Connor and Trevor did well to create an environment where this happens easily or naturally, or was there something specific that you think that they cultivated in this atmosphere to get those vulnerable, contact generating conversations to happen?
Absolutely, especially in the retreat. And I don't want to give away too much of it because I want people to experience it. But with the classes, and it's the same with Europa, like we sit in a circle. It's not ranked, and then there's like a chalkboard. We're in circles face to face most of the time. I mean, there was one day where we had ranks, but most of the time we're seeing each other. And then Dewey and Trevor are just, and Connor did an amazing job, and Michael Gay did an amazing job at the retreat of just holding that space of the masculine and feminine, of what they're just embodied what we're trying to learn. They just brought that, and they whatever we threw at them, they could handle, and that feels super safe. It's kind of like a parent who's calm when the kid's having a tantrum. We just want to know that their parent isn't going to lose their mind, and that makes me feel safe. So they're setting up that, and you can call it a safe container if you want to. That's often used in psychotherapy lingo. That's probably what I would say. First thought, best thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say they were a great example of showing, like how Miles was saying, how they showed up, their presence, and the way that they came about and how they communicated with you was in no manner closed off,
conditional.
It was like, hey, I accept you here. I'm attuning to you.
Yes.
I'm feeling your presence, not letting it become me.
Correct.
But I'm meeting you, and I love that part was meeting you at the barrier like this, and that's contact. It's not this that's merging. That's bad.
That's enmeshment.
That's confluence, and that's when we start, getting into nasty areas. That's actually something I learned from the Reiki and stuff. But meeting there at this presence, and both energetically, emotionally, physically, even all of that. And that was making contact. And when you look at them too, I mean, the way that they felt coming in was none of their hoses inside of flow of energy, I would call it, or emotions or whatever, were kinked. Everything was very flow. It seemed that way. Like you could feel that presence. And when you just kind of like, hey, I'm meeting you here. And what happened too throughout retreat, through these types of things, was people started unkinking their hoses and letting everything within their body, that somatic experience, flow.
And there wasn't like emotional leakage on the other spectrum where there were no boundaries, and it was just like free for all. It's all balance. It's really a skill, but Dewey's been doing it for a long time, so he's a great mentor to these two. And these guys just Connor and Trevor, just I think they're naturals at it. So
Well, the people that we admire the most do things so effortlessly when it comes to these things. I was, Jocko is really good about talking about grief in real time, and he's like, sometimes some things would just come up for me and I would get choked up and maybe I would cry or maybe I wouldn't. And, he would be at the bar or in some sort of regular setting and it just like it breaks down my limited vision of masculinity, like, oh yeah, I guess real men can just grieve the loss of a friend. I guess real men can listen to Mariah Carey. And it sounds so silly to say it out loud, but when you see it, I talked about my friend Brian Brackey breaking that one for me. But when you see, and then for women, this instructor was talking about having tears whenever she had to have a real emotional conversation, give someone bad news, like, hey, you didn't meet your requirements. We need to talk about like what we're going to do with you on the team. Or if she was getting negative feedback, she would get upset and she would just name it. She was like, hey, I know I'm tearing up right now, but I'm totally fine with this. And we're just gonna keep on driving through, and not in some sort of a Terminator way, but just like it's okay to be upset over these things. And that disarms the weirdness of like needing to manage and protect other people from our emotions, whether you're announcing things that are going on for you or, in a dynamic when you speak to it, but you're not reacting to your own emotions. It tempers down the fear around being vulnerable. And then what do you know? Contact and relationships, and you can have more powerful conversations and get further faster because you're not creating friction and running away from the realness of being a human.
absolutely.
And that's where a lot of that self-work comes into play. I mean, how can we make contact if we have something in here that's stalling us from making contact? I mean, like we said earlier, nobody's perfect, but there are certain elements that we learn and get to a point of saying, yes, I understand that this is maybe a trigger or something like that, but I'm not going to let it affect me making contact now because I understand it. Or getting to a point of saying, I've dealt enough with it and know enough about it that I can actually use it to make contact in a sense of, hey, man, I know what you've been through with this because here's what I've been through too. And here's how I was feeling in my dark place. That's another element to make contact, is to have that deep conversation too. So that's the other component I just wanted to say was, we need to make sure that we are continuing to do it because new kinks will rise, or in the hose, I should say. And as we go through life and develop and dive deeper, more things we unveil that may have been stopping us from making full contact.
It's It's a I still struggle with the vulnerability piece because I conflate emotions with manipulation. I think this is probably not an uncommon thing. But
Say more
sometimes
about
when I have something passionate to say or something that it impacts me, I don't share it. And I had a life coach. I asked him about vulnerability. He said, just admit when you're having an emotion. If you can just admit that in a conversation and saying, hey, Phil, when you brought this up, actually it upset me because it reminded me of this. That's enough. That's a thing. We just had a more real connection there
yeah.
because that story about your first concert reminded me of a painful memory, and now we will see more of each other. And I think I still it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm like a 4 out of 10, where like I can do it if I'm in the right mood, or if I'm like, okay, today I'm going to, make an effort. But it's still a skill. It's a very underdeveloped, and it's not as natural as it is with some people. But getting those reps in helps me have the next conversation and the next conversation and the next, maybe more intense or more triggering or more fraught emotion that I could share. But it is something that I've been working on cultivating for a long time. And you don't even think about that as a handicap, but it's a huge handicap when it comes to building relationships, and that's basically the cornerstone of your career and your social health and mental health.
Oh yeah. Well, let me add on something more there too. If you don't say anything that, something was bothering you. And it's not to say they have to say specifically what it is or anything, but just to say, hey, just kind of bear with me for a second. Something just kind of hit me internally, and I'll come back to you in a little bit with what it was, but right now it just hit me. Just thinking about a conversation and a friendship or a relationship, even. But if you weren't to say that, I wonder how many times we all have felt somebody not saying something when something was felt by them. And that created a trigger. It creates an uneasiness.
Mhm.
And I mean, we experience it. I mean, even when Miles has been here, there are a couple times where I felt something was kind of coming up and I didn't quite understand what it was. I was like, hey, Miles, this was something that's coming up for me. But I knew, Miles was feeling into it and something was off. But if you were to hold that back and not say anything,
You can
that
project.
person's intuition is going off saying, my gut, something's wrong here, something's off. And, they're emotionally start to shut down because they're getting ready for something to come that doesn't.
Mhm.
Or at least that they just see a calm demeanor. So it doesn't match the integrity of the person's actual feelings and emotions that's happening behind the scenes to what they're acting out in person, because it is acting out,
And I might
right?
project on top of
Even
that.
if it's calm.
I might make a story up about how you're feeling. Like,
Right.
I think it's my fault 100% or
Right.
something. Because the mind wants a story.
Yeah.
And for you, Josh, when you say it's hard to share emotions because you felt like they'd be manipulated. Was it sort of like growing up, they were weaponized? If you shared something, you got gaslit for them, or you're just punished for sharing them? Is that what you meant?
Good question. I think that I was thinking about this. I think that most of the time it would be, um, yeah, if I had a negative emotion to share or a need to share, then that would be, there'd be a lot of blowback for that. And there'd be a lot of conflict that would erupt from that. So it was a way to have a smooth interaction and get to the next chapter of whatever I was trying to deal with. So
Yeah.
it was a
So
survival
say,
strategy.
yeah.
And
Now that's getting in your way, probably.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's there's a balance, right? There's a level of diplomacy to keep going, right? Because I I try to balance um I was just talking about this with my girlfriend. I have there's an asymmetry of information when you're dealing with people when you're coaching in the health space, right? Because I have so much larger data sets. I've talked, I'm on my thousandth client or whatever, and I've got terabytes of behavioral inputs, and somebody is doing something that is destructive to the goal, but might not be destructive to the actual skill we're working on at the moment. So not everything needs to be addressed and fixed now. And it's a little bit of like, if I'm playing basketball with a third grader, I can't call every double dribble because we're trying to get them to not travel. And once we can get them playing at that level, then we can I'd layer in the next thing. So there's a little bit of we'll talk about that later, Brenda. Like right now, we're getting four meals of 40 grams of protein every 4 hours. We're doing the 4x4 challenge. So we're just going to worry on that. Right now, your Rice Krispie treats are not on the. I'm not. I don't have a problem with them at this juncture, you know. So there's a level of we need to acknowledge what's happening, but not spend too much time on it. So there's a level of just being practical, you know.
Mm.
And you were talking about every single thing that comes up with you. Have you ever seen any Vince Vaughn movie where he talks through the entire movie, whether it's Made or Bad Monkey just came out? He comments on every single thing and every single second and every frame. He's constantly narrating his emotional experience. And it's hilarious and exhausting, and you want to punch him in the face and you hate him, right? But you end up falling more in love with that character because they're so earnest and authentic, with what is happening. It's I think there's a level of having to embrace the inconvenience of being being real with people, and especially because it's so often not the way that we go about the world. I don't know. That's what was coming up for me, Phil.
Mm. Now, with that voice that you're saying, is that something like you're talking about ego inside of you talking to you? Or is that something inside of you, or just in general terms, you were just talking about Vince Vaughn?
Um, yeah, gr great question. It is a yes. It's a way to stay safe, right? Because I guess in my narrative, it is, do I really want to be? Because I don't. My fear is that I will not have the boundaries, right? And I'll be able to assert them with the person in front of me. So if the person wants to push against my boundaries, I might not trust myself to draw nice lines. And so I think part of that voice is like, do I really want to have a real or a raw conversation with this person? Because I don't know if I have the energy to show up the way I need to make it hygienic and safe for me.
Makes sense.
Um, so this is sort of like a good problem to have, right? If your problem is too many close relationships and too many vulnerable moments, then my sort of the charity I give myself is okay, I'm just not going to show up 100% right now because I don't want to get into it with this person. Good or bad, like the good consequences and the bad consequences. I'm not ready for this at that moment.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
But are you really safe
And
with that
good.
voice?
That's a great, I was just asking that to myself. I don't know. I mean, the short answer is I don't know. And if I sit with it,
Yeah.
I'm
Take a breath real fast. Just breathe in. Deep breath.
well, the answer is no,
Yeah.
because what I am is I'm very emotional,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know, you have to trust
Sure.
yourself to share emotions, right, with somebody.
And the
And
other person.
and it's out of control, right? So that part of me that wants to have control of the moment is the part that is um I'm giving into for sure. So there you go. Am I
Which
safe?
happens.
Yeah, I'm safe yeah, I'm too safe, I guess would be the piece, right? Because that's not living, right? If you're too safe all the time, you're not actually really ever
Right.
making contact.
Correct. Yeah, you're walling yourself in. But it's normal given childhood wounding to carry that into adulthood. So the goal is to outgrow it, and there are a lot of ways to do that. We've talked about a lot of ways, but yeah, that was good. A good in the moment self-reflection right there.
Great catch. Great catch, Phil. It was good. Good work, team. You guys just came off of a good retreat, it sounds like.
Well, I did want you to actually take a breath at that moment, but um, when you start reflecting on that, if you do later, when you start to feel that kind of stop, yeah, just take a breath, feel a little bit more into it, see what kind of comes up from there.
Well,
Yep. A little bit more of
it's
that somatic kind of component that's coming.
um the I'm all about feeling through things, but one of the things that it takes to run a business or get a date or be a coach and the only you have to deal with loss and rejection a lot, right? The only similarity that being a personal trainer or a health coach has to being a drill sergeant is that the drill sergeant sheds tears when soldiers wash out and they quit on themselves because they know how hard that soldier's life has already been and how harder it gets when you go backwards and you quit on yourself one more time. And and the heartbreak that is, how close that you are to finishing, and then you let it go. And every coach knows and every therapist knows, right? You see somebody who's drowning in 3 feet of water, and you're just like, fuck, if they could just get out of this tub, it'd be over. This part would be over. The pain and suffering of being a human would still be there. And the feeling into things and the somatic piece is I'm very raw because every cohort, every quarter, every conversation, every round of every program I run, I have outstanding successes and I share them on my podcast. I'm so happy to have them. And then I have people who they stop 3 feet from gold, and that hurts.
Mhm.
And it hurts because I love them and I want them to win, right? And it hurts because I care a lot. And that little voice of, the person trying to hold back is me protecting me from me, right?
Mhm.
So I don't have to feel that burn of almost delivering and or almost, getting that touchdown and then not doing it. So um, I think that the reminder for me is a great conversation, is a great reminder of that means I'm fucking in the right game. That means I'm doing it right. If I can be disappointed, if I can be heartbroken, if I can be wildly excited, that's exact that I'm in the right spot and I'm actually living. Um, and if it was just another number, then it would be time to get out.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll forward you the money for the therapy as usual.
I'll send you the bill. No, it was really great to see you again and talk with you.
Heck yeah,
Really
Phil.
was.
I'm excited. I can't wait to see you out here. We gotta get something, whether it's a hike or a
Yeah,
psychedelic journey. We'll get something on the books.
I
That
like
sounds
it.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I plan on coming back out sometime during the winter here for probably a week or so. So, well, when I say winter, Colorado winter,
That's a
not the
different.
Portland winter.
Yeah, that's totally different. Maybe we can get you out here for a Man Uncivilized event or something.
Yeah.
'Cause he stays pretty local for the most part. He lives here, Trevor, so
Yeah.
that'd be kind of fun too, just to do that.
100%. I've got a passport, and I know you don't need one for Colorado, but just saying.
If you don't have the real ID, you do. I got told at the airport on the way here I didn't have the real ID, and it's like, no, these are one of the new ones. And they're like, no, there's a newer new one. I'm like, okay, just can't
Wow.
wait.
You
Yeah,
got the
man. So I'll
fake
just
real
bring my
ID.
passport. I have the fake real ID, exactly. I'll just bring my passport next time. So stupid.
Yeah, we can't trust you.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. If Miles is your real name.
Don't break contact with me.
That was good.
All
All
right,
right, guys. Well,
let's break contact.
on that note, we'll safely break contact and look forward to our next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Likewise, great time as always.
Heck
All
yeah.
right, we're out.